I'm Elena Vance. I'm 45 years old, and everything shifted last Tuesday when I glanced at a crumpled Powerball ticket and realized those 6 perfect numbers meant I had just become $47 million richer. My hands didn't tremble with excitement like the winners you see on TV. Instead, a cold chill ran down my spine. Once the disbelief faded, an unexpected resolve took hold. A terrifying, icy calm settled over me. I wouldn't breathe a word of this to anyone. Absolutely no one. My family and money have never mixed well, and 20 years of acting as their interest-free bank taught me exactly what silence could protect. If you're following this story, I'd love to know where you're reading from. Before I explain the ruthless choice that freed my life, don't forget to like and subscribe. Here, I share the naked truth about the cost of kindness, betrayal, and the thin line between family and strangers. Until that life-altering Tuesday, my existence was a loop of invisibility. I was the head nurse at an overcrowded public hospital in Chicago. My job was fighting for other people's lives, yet no one seemed to care if I was living or merely surviving. That day was supposed to be special, or at least I thought so. It marked exactly 20 years since I first pinned my nursing badge to my scrubs. 2 decades of night shifts, feet swollen from varicose veins, and hasty meals eaten in the corner of a break room. I had hoped for something, maybe a congratulatory text? But no. My phone buzzed 3 times that day, and not one message said, "Happy 20th anniversary, Elena." The first was from my mother, Diane, retired in Florida. "Did you transfer the car insurance money for Dad yet? Don't let it be late like last month." The second was from Julian, my brother, a successful plastic surgeon. "Reminding you that Sophie's birthday is this weekend. She wants professional ballet shoes. Can you pick them up?" And the last was from Lisa, my baby sister. "Hey, Elle, can you spot me $200 for groceries? My credit card got declined again." That was my reality. I was the eldest sister, the default dutiful daughter, the life raft they clung to whenever they needed to float, but the one they forgot when the seas were calm. That night, I drove my 15-year-old Ford Focus home through the pouring Chicago rain. The check engine light on the dashboard blinked like it was mocking me. I pulled into a gas station, not because I needed fuel, but because I couldn't bear the thought of returning to my cold condo to eat dinner alone on my anniversary. I bought a lukewarm hot dog and, in a moment of impulse, a $2 Powerball ticket. I didn't pick random numbers. I chose the numbers that had bound my life for 2 decades. Dad's birthday, Mom's birthday, the date of Julian's graduation, the one I worked overtime to pay for, the date my divorce was finalized, leaving me with my ex-husband's debt, and finally, the number 20, for the 20 years of youth I had squandered. When I got home, I sat in my kitchen, listening to the rain lash against the window, and checked the app. First came 12, then 04, then 28. When the final number, 20, lined up perfectly with the screen, time stopped. $47 million. I didn't scream with joy. I slumped over the cheap laminate kitchen table and wept. I sobbed uncontrollably, not tears of happiness, but tears of liberation. I cried for the vacations I never took. I cried for the savings account that sat at 0 because I was always fixing someone else's mess. I cried for the exhausted 45-year-old woman I saw in the mirror every morning. At 45, I realized a brutal truth. No one was coming to save me. I was the safety net for the entire family, but I was free-falling without one. Sitting in the dark, staring at the ticket lying on the table, I remembered a text Dad sent me just last week when I told him I couldn't afford to pay for his new golf clubs. "You're selfish, Elena. We raised you to sacrifice more than this." A cold resolve settled in my chest, sharper than the winter wind outside. They didn't know the real me. They only knew Elena the provider, Elena the fixer. If I told them about this money now, nothing would change. The exploitation would just get more expensive. I needed to know, truly know, who these people were when I had nothing left to give. I tucked the ticket inside the spine of an old medical textbook on the shelf. I wasn't going to claim it yet, not until I ran a test that might cost me my dignity, but might just save the rest of my life. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in 6 years. I called in sick. My supervisor, a woman 10 years my junior who managed the floor from behind a computer screen, sounded annoyed. "We're short-staffed, Elena, again." "I know," I said, my voice steady despite the flutter in my chest. "I'm sorry. It's an emergency." Technically, it wasn't a lie. My entire existence was in a state of emergency. The ground had shifted beneath my feet, and I was the only one who felt the earthquake. I spent the morning in the plush, silent office of Philip Montgomery, a high-profile estate attorney downtown. Sitting in his leather chair, clutching my purse with a death grip, I felt like an imposter. I was wearing my best blazer, but I knew the hem was fraying, and my shoes were scuffed from miles of hospital corridors. Philip was professional, efficient, and thankfully discreet. We set up a blind trust. We discussed tax implications. We talked about anonymity. "The biggest mistake winners make," Philip said, leaning forward, "is thinking that money solves relationship problems. It doesn't. It amplifies them." I nodded. "I know. That's why I need to know who my family really is before I sign a single check." By the time I walked out of his office, the machinery was in motion. The money was real. It was secure. I was technically a multimillionaire, yet I drove my rattling Ford Focus back to my cramped condo and ate leftover tuna casserole for lunch. That afternoon, I crafted the lie. It had to be believable. It had to be terrifying. And most importantly, it had to attack the one thing my family valued more than money: reputation. If I told them I lost my job, they might roll their eyes and call me lazy. But if I told them I was in legal trouble, that was a different beast. In America, the words lawsuit and negligence carry a stench that people are desperate to wash off. I sat at my kitchen table with a notepad, scripting the conversation like a playwright for a tragedy. The scenario: I had made a medication error during a chaotic shift. A patient had an adverse reaction. Not fatal, but serious. The family was threatening a massive malpractice lawsuit and reporting me to the nursing board. The solution? Their lawyer had offered a quiet, one-time settlement to make it go away. An NDA, non-disclosure agreement. No court, no press, no record. The cost? $15,000. To a wealthy family, $15,000 is a nuisance. To a middle-class family, it's a car. But to my family, who I knew had the resources if they pooled them together, it was a choice. I stared at the number on the paper. $15,000. It wasn't just about the cash. I needed the money by Friday, or the deal was off, and I would face a public trial, the loss of my nursing license, and potential jail time for criminal negligence. This was the hook. I wasn't just asking for a loan. I was asking for salvation. I was asking them to save me from ruin, from shame, from ending my career in a prison cell. I looked at the list of names I had written down. Mom and Dad, Gregory and Diane, retired in Florida, sitting on a comfortable nest egg and a beach condo. Julian, my brother, the plastic surgeon in the suburbs who leased a new Porsche every 2 years. Lisa, my sister, the stay-at-home mom who constantly posted about her blessed life and her husband's bonuses. I took a deep breath. My heart hammered against my ribs, not from fear of the lie, but from a terrifying premonition of the truth. I wasn't 25 anymore. I didn't have the luxury of naivety. Deep down, I suspected I knew exactly how this script would play out, but I needed to hear them say the lines. I needed the evidence. I picked up the phone. My hand trembled just slightly. "Okay," I whispered to the empty room. Let's see what I'm worth. I dialed my mother's number first. The phone rang 4 times before my mother picked up. In the background, I could hear the distinct tinny murmur of a game show on TV and the clinking of ice in a glass. It was 4:00 p.m. in Florida, happy hour at the condo complex. Hello? Elena? Her voice was bright, distracted. You caught us just before we headed down to the clubhouse. Your father is trying to find his other sandal. Hi, Mom, I said. I forced a tremor into my voice, which wasn't hard to do. My palms were sweating against the plastic case of my phone. Is Dad there? I need to talk to both of you. It's bad. The background noise didn't stop, but her tone shifted instantly from casual to wary. Bad? What do you mean bad? Is it your health? No, it's work. Please, put Dad on. A moment of shuffling, a muffled exchange, and then the deep, impatient breathing of my father, Gregory. We're listening, Elena. What's going on? I squeezed my eyes shut and launched into the script. I told them about the chaotic shift, the medication error, the patient's family lawyer, and the terrifying ultimatum. They want to settle, I choked out, letting the desperation bleed into the receiver. If I pay $15,000 by Friday, they sign an NDA. It goes away. I keep my license. If I don't, I lose everything, Dad. I'll be barred from nursing. They're talking about criminal negligence charges. I could go to jail. I stopped, leaving the word jail hanging in the air like a guillotine blade. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the faint sound of Wheel of Fortune from their living room. 15,000? My father repeated slowly. He didn't sound scared for me. He sounded like he was looking at a restaurant bill that had an unexpected surcharge. I don't have it, I whispered. I'm still paying off the car repairs from winter, and my credit is shot from the divorce. I need your help. Please, it's a loan. I'll pay you back with interest, every cent. I can't go to prison, Mom. I waited for the maternal instinct to kick in. I waited for Diane, the woman who posted family is everything memes on Facebook, to cry out in horror, to tell me to breathe, to say they would wire the money instantly. Instead, I heard my mother sigh, a long, ragged sound of disappointment. Oh, Elena, she said, how could you be so careless? You've been doing this for 20 years. Accidents happen, Mom. We were understaffed. This is exactly why I told you to get that extra liability insurance. My father cut in, his voice hardening. But you never listen, do you? Dad, please, the money. Elena, he said, his tone shifting into the lecture mode I knew so well. You know we're on a fixed income now. We have the condo fees, the medical premiums, and your mother's physical therapy. Our liquidity is tied up in CDs and the retirement trust. I know, I said, tears of frustration, real frustration, pricking my eyes. But you just bought a new boat last month. You posted the pictures. That's different, he snapped. That was planned. That was budgeted for. This is a disaster of your own making. We have to protect our future, honey, Mom added, her voice softening into a patronizing coo. If we pull that money out now, we get hit with penalties. And what if we get sick? We can't jeopardize our security because you made a mistake at work. I'm your daughter, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I'm not asking for a vacation. I'm asking you to keep me out of a cell. And we love you, Mom said quickly, but maybe this is a sign. Maybe you're too old for the stress of the ER. If you lose your license, you could find something else, something simpler. Walmart is always hiring greeters. The air left my lungs. They weren't broke. I knew their finances. I had helped organize their taxes 3 years ago. They had over $500,000 sitting in liquid assets. They could write a check for $15,000 and not even feel it. They weren't protecting their survival. They were protecting their comfort. They were choosing their penalties and their boat fuel over my freedom. So the answer is no? I asked. The trembling in my voice was gone. It was replaced by a cold, dead calm. We just can't do it, Ellie, Dad said, sounding relieved that the conversation was wrapping up. You're 45 years old. You have to learn to clean up your own messes. It's time to grow up. Okay, I said. I understand. Let us know how it goes, Mom said, her cheerfulness returning now that her wallet was safe. We'll pray for you. Thanks, I said. Enjoy the clubhouse. I hung up. I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone. I didn't cry. The tears I had shed the night before were for the fear of being unloved. This wasn't fear anymore. It was clarity. They had just told me exactly what I was worth to them. I was worth less than a tax penalty. I was worth less than a pontoon boat. I picked up my pen and drew a thick black line through Mom and Dad on my notepad. The ink tore through the paper. 1 down, 2 to go. They say blood is thicker than water. But standing in my dimly lit kitchen, watching the rain streak against the window pane, I realized that blood is also sticky. It messes everything up, and it's impossible to wash off. I stared at the next name on my list. Julian, my younger brother, the golden boy, the one whose medical school textbooks I had paid for by working double shifts on Christmas and Thanksgiving for 4 years straight. He was now a successful plastic surgeon in Naperville, living in a house with a heated driveway and a wine cellar that cost more than my entire education. I dialed his number. He answered on the second ring via Bluetooth, probably driving his Tesla home. Hey, Elle. Make it quick. I'm merging onto the highway. No, hello? No, how are you? Just immediate time management. I'm in trouble, Julian, I said, skipping the pleasantries. I laid out the lie again, the error, the lawyer, the $15,000 standing between me and a jail cell. Whoa, wait, he interrupted, his voice dropping an octave. You're telling me you're being sued for malpractice? For negligence? It was a mistake, Julian. I'm tired. We're overworked. But if I don't pay this settlement by Friday, I lose my license. I could go to prison. Jesus, Elena, he hissed. Do you have any idea what this sounds like? A settlement implies guilt. If this gets out, it won't get out. That's what the money is for. It buys an NDA. And if it does leak? He sounded frantic, but not for me. I have a practice to think about. My partners look for any reason to push someone out. If my sister is a convicted felon for medical negligence, how does that look on my bio? Dr. Vance comes from a long line of incompetence? I gripped the phone tighter. I'm not asking you to hire me. I'm asking for a loan. You just bought a vacation home in Lake Geneva, Julian. I know you have it. That's assets, Elena. It's not liquid cash sitting in a pile, he snapped, using the same evasive financial jargon as our father. Look, I can't be involved in this. It's a liability issue. If I give you money for a settlement, it could look like I'm an accessory to a cover-up. My lawyer would have a stroke. I paid for your MCATs, I said, my voice trembling with a rage I hadn't expected. I paid your rent when you failed your first residency match. You owe me. That was a long time ago, he said coldly. Don't guilt-trip me because you screwed up. I can't help you. Don't call me again until this is resolved. I can't have this on my call logs. The line went dead. He hadn't just said no. He had treated me like a cancerous tumor that needed to be cut out to save the healthy tissue. I didn't have time to mourn the relationship. I dialed Lisa. My baby sister. The one I had rocked to sleep when our parents were fighting. The one who called me crying every time her husband, a corporate VP, worked late too many nights in a row. She picked up amidst the chaos of screaming children. Elle! Perfect timing. Do you think a 7-year-old needs the fast pass for Disney? Or is it a waste of money? Lisa, I need help, I said. I told the story for the third time. By now, the lie tasted like ash in my mouth. Oh my God, Lisa gasped. Prison? That's so ghetto, Elena. I need $15,000 by Friday. 15,000? She laughed, a high, nervous sound. Honey, we're house poor right now. We just redid the master bath, and Tyler's bonus doesn't hit until March. You posted a picture of a new Peloton yesterday, I said dully. And you're taking the whole family to Disney World next week. That trip alone is 10 grand. We can't cancel Disney, she shrieked, as if I had suggested sacrificing her firstborn. The kids would be traumatized. Besides, everything is on credit cards. We're maxed out. Then borrow it, I pleaded. Ask Tyler, please, Lisa. If I go to jail, I lose everything. Look, she said, her voice taking on that annoying pseudo-therapeutic tone she learned from Instagram influencers. Maybe this is the universe telling you to slow down. Have you thought about filing for bankruptcy? Or a public defender? I hear they're... Okay. You won't help me, I stated. I can't, she corrected. I have my own family to worry about. You've always been the strong one, Elle. You'll figure it out. You always do. Yeah, I whispered. I always do. She hung up to tend to her crying child, leaving her crying sister to drown. I sat in the silence of my kitchen. The list of names was crossed out. My parents, my brother, my sister, the people who shared my DNA, the people I had carried on my back for 20 years. When the ship started sinking, they didn't offer a hand. They just made sure they weren't standing too close to the splash. I was alone, truly, completely alone, or so I thought. A soft knock on my door made me jump. It wasn't the aggressive pound of a landlord or a process server. It was a hesitant, gentle rap. I wiped my face with my sleeve and walked to the door. When I opened it, I looked down to see Cousin Sarah standing there, her cheap raincoat dripping onto my welcome mat. Sarah stood on my welcome mat, shivering in a windbreaker that was too thin for a Chicago autumn. She was the family's cautionary tale, the cousin who got pregnant at 19, worked at a diner, and lived in a trailer park 2 towns over. We hadn't spoken in 6 months, not since I sent her a birthday card with a $50 gift certificate to Target inside. Can I come in? She asked, her voice raspy. I stepped back, wordlessly letting her into the warmth of the hallway. She smelled like rain and stale cigarette smoke, a scent that usually made me wrinkle my nose. Tonight, it smelled like humanity. I didn't call you, Sarah, I said, closing the door. I didn't put you on the list. I know, she said, shaking the water from her hair. She walked into my kitchen, her eyes scanning the empty table where my notepad lay face down. But Aunt Diane called me about an hour ago. My stomach dropped. Of course she did. She told me you were in trouble, Sarah said, leaning against the counter. She said you messed up big time at the hospital. Negligence. Lawsuit. She said you were calling everyone begging for money and that I should block your number because you were probably having a breakdown and trying to scam the family. I laughed, a dry, bitter sound. Scam the family? That's rich coming from her. Is it true? Sarah asked, her eyes searching mine. About the lawsuit? About the 15 grand? Yes, I lied. It was harder to lie to Sarah than to the others. She knew what desperation looked like. She wore it like a second skin. If I don't pay it by Friday, I'm done. License revoked. Maybe jail. Sarah nodded slowly. She didn't ask how I could be so stupid. She didn't ask about liability insurance. She didn't tell me to file for bankruptcy. Instead, she reached into her oversized purse and pulled out a thick white envelope. She placed it on the table between us. "It's not 15, she said quietly. "It's 6. I stared at the envelope. 6 what? $6,000. My breath hitched. Sarah, where did you get $6,000? You're behind on your lot fees. You told me last Christmas you were saving for Danny's braces." "I sold the truck," she said, shrugging as if she had just sold a toaster. "My neighbor has been eyeing it for months. He paid cash. And I cashed out the small IRA Mom left me when she passed." "You sold your truck?" I whispered. "Sarah, how are you going to get to work?" "I can take the bus. It takes longer, but it gets there." She pushed the envelope toward me. "Take it, Ellie. It's a start. Maybe if we beg Julian, he can match it." "Julian already said no," I said, my voice cracking. "They all said no." Sarah's face hardened. "Figures. Stingy bastards. They got millions between them, and they let you hang out to dry." She looked at me with a fierce intensity. "But you're not going to jail. Not on my watch. You are the only one who visited me in rehab, Ellie. You are the only one who bought Danny's school clothes when I was using. I don't forget that." I looked at the envelope. Inside was everything she had. Her transportation, her safety net, her son's future dental work. She had liquidated her entire life in less than an hour because she heard I was in trouble. She didn't care about her reputation. She didn't care about enabling me. She just saw a drowning woman and jumped in, even though she couldn't swim very well herself. "I can't take this," I said, pushing the envelope back. "You have to," she insisted. "We're family." "No," I said, and for the first time in 24 hours, a genuine smile broke through my mask of misery. "We are family. They are just relatives." I reached out and took her rough, calloused hands in mine. "Sarah, listen to me closely," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. "I need you to sit down. I have something to show you." "What? Is it the lawyers?" "No," I said. I walked over to the bookshelf and pulled the Powerball ticket out of the spine of the medical textbook. I walked back and placed the slip of paper on top of her envelope of cash. "I don't need the 6,000, I said, tears finally spilling over. Not from sadness, but from an overwhelming sense of relief. "But I needed to know if anyone would sell their truck for me." Sarah looked at the ticket, then at me, confused. "I don't get it." "Read the numbers, Sarah, and then check the date." She picked it up. She squinted, pulling out her reading glasses. She checked the numbers against the app on her phone. I watched her face transform. Confusion, shock, disbelief, and then pure, unadulterated terror. "Ellie," she whispered, looking around the shabby apartment as if expecting a SWAT team to burst in. Is this real?" "It's real," I said. $47 million. "But the lawsuit? The jail time?" "A lie," I said. "A test. And you're the only one who passed." Sarah slumped back in her chair, covering her mouth with her hand. "Holy shit." "Keep your money, Sarah," I said, grabbing the envelope and shoving it back into her purse. "You're going to need it to pay the movers." "Movers?" "We have a family meeting to attend," I said, my eyes flashing with a cold, hard light. "And after that, we're getting the hell out of here." We chose Sunday dinner at Julian's house for the revelation. It was the perfect stage, a sprawling McMansion in Naperville with vaulted ceilings and a dining table long enough to land a plane on. I arrived with Sarah in a rented black Escalade. When we walked in, the silence was immediate. I wasn't wearing my usual scrubs or the frayed cardigan I'd owned since 2015. I was wearing a tailored wool coat, diamond studs that cost more than my car, and a calmness that terrified them. "Elena," Mom said, her eyes darting to the stranger behind me. "And Sarah? What is she doing here?" "I invited her," I said smoothly, walking past them to the head of the table, Dad's usual spot. I pulled out the chair and sat down. "We have things to discuss." The family gathered, looking like vultures uncertain if the carcass was still fighting back. Julian poured himself a scotch, avoiding my eyes. Lisa was aggressively texting under the table. Dad cleared his throat. "Look, Elena," Dad started, using his reasonable parent voice. "We've been talking. We can't give you the $15,000, but Julian knows a decent public defender. He might be able to get you a plea deal. Less jail time." "A plea deal," I repeated, swirling the water in my crystal glass. "That's generous." "It's the best we can do," Julian muttered. "You have to face the consequences of your actions." "I agree," I said. "Consequences are important." I reached into my designer purse. The room went still. They probably expected a subpoena, or maybe a suicide note. Instead, I pulled out a cashier's check. I slid it across the mahogany table. It wasn't directed at Julian or Mom or Dad. It stopped in front of Sarah, who was sitting nervously at the far end, looking ready to bolt. "Sarah," I said, my voice clear and ringing in the cavernous room. "This is for the truck, and for Danny's braces, and for the house you're going to buy tomorrow." Julian leaned over to look at the check. His glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the floor. $2,000. What is this?" Mom gasped, clutching her pearls. "Elena, is this fake? Is this some kind of sick joke?" "It's a cashier's check, Mom. As good as gold," I said, leaning back. "You see, there was no lawsuit. There was no negligence. There was no jail time." I looked at each of them in turn. "I won the Powerball on Tuesday. $47 million. The air left the room. It was physical, a collective, gasping vacuum. I watched the realization hit them like a physical blow. I saw the mental calculus happening behind their eyes. The boats they wouldn't buy, the vacations they wouldn't take, the debts they wouldn't pay off. "Oh my God!" Lisa shrieked, pushing her chair back and running around the table to hug me. "Ellie, that's amazing! I knew it! I knew something good was coming for you!" I didn't move. I didn't hug her back. I just looked at her until she stopped, her arms falling awkwardly to her sides. "Sit down, Lisa," I said coldly. "But we're family," Dad stammered, his face flushing red. "Elena, this is wonderful. We can finally set up that trust for the grandkids. We can do nothing," I interrupted. "I asked you for $15,000 to save my life. You told me to go to hell. You told me I wasn't worth the penalty on your CD." I pointed at Sarah, who was staring at the check with tears streaming down her face. "She sold her truck," I said, my voice shaking with suppressed rage. "She has nothing, and she gave me everything. You have everything, and you gave me nothing." "We were just trying to teach you a lesson," Mom cried, the tears flowing freely now, tears of regret for the fortune she had just lost. "And you did." I stood up, signaling Sarah to follow. "You taught me that my value to you ends where your inconvenience begins." "Elena, you can't leave like this!" Julian shouted, chasing us to the foyer. "We're your blood!" I stopped at the heavy oak door and turned back one last time. Blood is just biology, Julian, I said. Loyalty is a choice, and you made yours. I walked out into the crisp autumn air. The rain had stopped. The sky was clear, vast, and full of stars. As I climbed into the Escalade beside Sarah, my phone began to buzz. Mom, Dad, Lisa, Julian, a symphony of desperation. I rolled down the window and dropped the phone onto the concrete driveway. I watched Julian run out just in time to see me back over it. The crunch of glass and plastic was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. "Where to?" Sarah asked, clutching the check to her chest, her eyes wide with fear and wonder. I looked at the road ahead. It was long, open, and for the first time in 45 years, it belonged entirely to me. "Anywhere we want, Sarah," I smiled. "Anywhere we want." The lottery changed my life, but not in the way I expected. It didn't fix old wounds, but it gave me the freedom to finally see the truth. In the end, the real prize wasn't the $47 million. It was the realization that the people who truly belong in your life aren't the ones who love you for what you can provide, but the ones who remain when you have nothing left to offer. Have you ever tested someone's loyalty? What did that reveal to you? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story spoke to you, please remember to like and subscribe for more real stories about family, trust, and rediscovering what really matters. And most importantly, share this with someone who needs to be reminded that their worth isn't defined by what they can give. Thank you for listening, and may you find the clarity to see the truth in your own relationships.